All right, welcome everybody. Hopefully you can see my screen. So welcome everybody to today's Conexxus365 event. Today we have a rockstar session for you, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation between Gray and Anil. So this is our agenda for today. I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping notes, tell you a little bit about Conexxus. We'll get right into the conversation between Gray and Anil, and then we will have some time at the very end for Q&A. The webinar is being recorded, and it'll be made available on Conexxus365.org. You have, all of you are muted, and you will stay muted throughout the entire presentation. If you have questions for Anil, I would invite you to put those in the question panel in your GoToWebinar user interface. Please no vendor-specific questions, and get those questions in early in case we run out of time for Q&A. The legal disclaimer is that the views are not necessarily those of Conexxus, and we aren't providing legal advice of any kind. If you have questions about anything that comes up, legal concerns, please consult with your own attorneys. I want to give a big shout out to our 2022 annual Diamond sponsors. Without these companies providing the extra sponsorship, Conexxus wouldn't be able to do as much as we do. And believe me, we have a lot on our plate to accomplish. So Conexxus is an independent, not-for-profit, member-driven technology organization. Standards are one of our core tenets, including age verification, which I'm sure Anil and Gray will get into a little bit later in their conversation. We also provide vision for the industry. One of the things that we do is a technology roadmap along with NACS, and that provides vision for the future for our industry. We've also got the Innovation Research Committee at Conexxus, which is made up of retailers looking at things in the future. And then finally, we advocate on behalf of the industry. And this is to make sure that any organization that is setting standards or policy are aware of our needs. And we just want to make sure that at the end of the day, these organizations aren't doing anything to negatively impact our ability to do business, and that we can influence them to do things that are beneficial for the industry. So with that, I'm going to turn, one final slide here, sorry, connect with Conexxus. So if you want to get in touch with us, there's our website address, there's LinkedIn information, but also I would encourage you, today this is a VIP session, which is normally exclusive for our subscribers to Conexxus365. We did open this up as a free content, just so you can see what you might be missing without having a full subscription. So I would encourage you to check that out as well in Conexxus365.org. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Gray, and let me stop sharing my screen here. I'm going to turn this over to Gray and Anil. So Gray is the Executive Director of Conexxus, and with him is Anil John, who is the Technical Director for the Silicon Valley Innovation Program, the Science and Technology Directorate of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And Gray and Anil, please have a great conversation, and I will be back with you towards the end to do any Q&A.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Anil, welcome. It's been well over one pandemic since we actually had a chance to have a cup of coffee in Washington, but it was one of the most transformative discussions I've ever had. I'm really glad that you could make time to come and talk to us about some really important things. What we're really here to talk about today is the case and the need for a future different way of identifying ourselves. If you listen to what the World Economic Forum said a couple of months ago, is that digital identity, if done correctly, and I want to underline that, if done correctly, has the potential to raise the global GDP 13%. Which is just a huge number. And they also cited some other things about global inclusion that we take for granted. Other countries that do not have a good identity system, where you literally have billions of people who cannot own things because they can't prove who they are. And Anil is one of these folks who is tackling that problem. And so, welcome. I'd like you to kind of give us an overview as to why you see digital and the future of identity as being such a critical issue for our economy.
Thank you for that introduction, Gray. I'm hoping that the sounding through okay. All right, perfect. So I think in order to sort of answer the question, it might be worthwhile to articulate what I do within that context. Because as talking to a government person, one of the things that you sort of will get at is within the scope, the remit of my organization. This is what we can with a particular area. So my background in this area predates Department of Homeland Security. I used to be the technical lead federal government's identity, credential, and access management program, and used to run our certification and accreditation program for private sector identity service that could be bought government. Are they secure? Are they privacy respecting? Are they truly interoperable and the like, right? So you deal with a lot of the interact between the private sector ecosystem and the government ecosystem. It comes to identity. Moved over to Department of Homeland Security. Initial role was program manager on the R side for identity management and data privacy, and currently I'm the director of the Silicon Valley Innovation Program, as you noted, where we have three particular work streams that are tied in digital identity. One of them is I am fortunate enough that basically two of the streams are by two organizations that are old as America, right? So you have U.S. Citizenship and Immigration, U.S. Immigration that has been around as America has been around. These are the organization that is responsible for the issuance of very value credentials issued by the federal government, U.S. permanent and resident card, employment authorization document, certificates of citizenship naturalization. So working in order to issue digitally what they currently issue in a paper format. So that is one area that that is obviously that I'm involved in with our partners at USIS. The other side of the equation is on the digital state credentials, so organizational identity more than anything else. So this is with the other part of America that is as old as America, government that is as old as America, which is U.S. Customs. So if you're bringing any good to the country, you need to provide information to U.S. Customs on where those goods are coming from, so that they can make a decision on yes, no, we want to talk to you more. And in order to do that, you need to have visibility into the multiple hubs in the supply chain. Who are the organizations moving goods into the country? And so that's an area of the identity, but more at the organizational level. And the last but not least is something really interesting, led by the DHS Chief Privacy Officer. For those who are not familiar with this, DHS was the first U.S. government a department it was stood up that actually statutorily required the presence of a privacy office, right? So, and DHS Privacy Office and Lynn Dupree and a team, they're pretty awesome. They actually aim to see if open standards can be used as a mechanism for replacing the collection of social security numbers only within the department. So all three of those areas are really important. I think coming back to the question that you asked, all three of them cannot be done in a governmental way, because both U.S. Customs, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, and DHS Privacy Office such a global audience. So we need solutions that are global, truly interoperable, truly standards compliant, so that we're not locked into a particular ecosystem. And that's sort of where I sort of sit right now in working with our partner enabling that. I know that was a long-winded answer, Gray, but hopefully a complete one.
Well, and I think you bring up the very valid point of this, which is we've traditionally taken identity for granted, and we've taken privacy for granted because, well, I'm old enough to have grown up in the analog world, and when I showed somebody my driver's license, that was not a big deal. But I think we've all learned over the last 2 years how important having how important digital ID is, and we're not there, so we all suffered by, I got to give you gobs of PII just so I can transact with you. And I think what you're tackling with CIS and with customs is, just proving that I have the right to work here. I'm a green card holder. I have to hand you gobs of information and paperwork as an employer so that you can validate this. And I think what you're looking to do is really, how do I streamline that? And then the other point that it really adds a lot of complexity to your job is, well, how do you get the rest of the world to dance to the same thing?
It's a fair point. At the end of the road, I think there is a role for government in this, and it is not to mandate something one way or the other, because we have to live in a connected world, and systems need to interoperate. So the foundation level, I think if you talk to colleagues at USIS, they will start from a set of principles. We need to make sure that whatever digital credentialing infrastructure and scheme that we put in place is a choice and not a requirement, because there are people who are not going to be comfortable with digital technologies. We do not have, as a public entity, have the luxury of pivot to serve just a segment of the population. We have to provide equal access to everybody. So from that perspective, we need to ensure that there is digital equity, equivalency in access to services. So ensuring that even though there is a digital credential, the path to paper, the bridge to paper exists. And for people who choose not to use the digital version or cannot use it for whatever reason, the existing paper-based processes can be used to satisfy it. So not a requirement, absolutely a choice. The second one is, if you look at the current set standards and technology, I mean, going back to PKI infrastructure to SAL to OpenID Connect, all of those ecosystems, I will say, have a very patriarchal model in a lot of ways, where the issuer knows best what's good for you, right? And I think one of the things that's sort of inherently as a byproduct of that is credentials that are issued from those type of traditional existing infrastructures have a tendency, if you're an issuer and you're either malicious or curious, have the ability to have an awareness of where that credential is used. And potentially, if you are inclined, track you across space and time and profile of your activities. That is not a path to success for us. So for us, elimination of the ability for a credential to phone home when it is used, or when it is checked revocation and things like that, fundamental the principles that USCIS on the personal credential side is very focused on. We want you to use our digital credentials in the same way that you use our physical credentials. When you share our physical credentials, USCIS has no awareness of where you're using it. That is exactly the way we want to treat our digital credentials. So second principle is eliminate phone home architectures. Third one is there is sneaky ways to bring in awareness of where credentials are, and all too often that's because often you need to refresh credentials or things like that. And the reality is that in a lot of instances, the mechanisms that are used to refresh credential is often something that could be initiated by somebody who's verifying a credential, right? Like a store or something like. So in our architecture, and based on the principles of USCIS is articulating in our issuance, we will not support any type of issuance infrastructure that actually does not put the person fully in the loop and aware that they are initiating a refresh of credential. Our infrastructure will not respond to any request from any verifier to get additional information of that person without the person consenting and providing information, right? And last but not two pieces is selective disclosure and minimization of the sharing. Really important to us. I'm not a fan of knowledge proofs. All right. So what I mean by that there is a set of technologies that come under the umbrella of zero knowledge predicate proofs. This is the easy example is you as a credential provider have access to birth dates, and you have the ability to say that you are over 18. That sounds like a great idea, and it is one. The challenge that we have in the current ecosystem is proofs like that, or zero knowledge proofs like that, often are things people all talk about, but rarely implement for a particular reason. And that particular reason is that if you do not have a liability model around the usage of zero knowledge proof, where somebody held accountable when things go wrong, a relying party or a end party is not going to trust that. So what often ends up is a lot of people demonstrate knowledge proofs and predicate proofs and things like that. In cases where this is low value credentials, and I think one of the interesting and fascinating aspect of what you are doing with Age within the Conexxus ecosystem is it is not a low value transaction. It's actually a pretty high value transaction, and the way that you sort of structured that is something that I hope that we can get into, and things like that. But the long and short of this, for us, zero knowledge proofs are not really the driver for us. Selective disclosure of information tends to be the driver for us. And so, and last but not least, is we've been around long enough and have peddled enough stuff by a variety of parties where proprietary APIs, proprietary solutions have led us down on a path where we locked into a particular system, particular set of APIs, particular set of business relations.
Anil?
That we expect to use and develop will be open, royalty free, and to use by everybody. And at least for the USCIS use cases itself and their work stream, they all have put a line, not in hand, because that can be moved, a line in concrete that basically says that we will not, for example, issue our credentials into any type of digital wallet that requires us to have sort of a bespoke MOA or business relationship with the wallet vendor, right? So the open ecosystem. So I would say that basically principles are important, and concrete implementation choices that you do the implementation in order to make things happen are just as important as well.
Sounds like
in all of these cases, sorry for interrupting, all of these cases, it also requires that our counterparty are the government. It is of the sector. You need it to work.
Yeah.
Globally.
Sounds like you got a really simple job, which is it needs to be anonymous. It needs to be accepted by all. You cannot rely on a third party in between to transact that, and it needs to be verifiable.
Yeah, simple, isn't it? Oh yeah, and that's the thing. I think I am a public servant. The work that I do is funded by all of our taxpayer dollars. So I am accountable on a regular basis to ensure that the work that we are doing is sort of ideally at the vein of what matters to my agency, matters to the broader technical ecosystem, and last but not least, and just as important, the public interest. So from that perspective, it's really important that we are very transparent in the work we do, and ideally, the work that we do is not behind firewall, not behind closed doors, and the artifacts and the outcome of that work should be leverageable for free by all people that are actually paying to do the work, which is the American public.
That's a great way to put it, because I've always been impressed with the mission and the way that you're approaching it, so much so that we adopted it for TrueAge, because it hits me really well. So when we talk about, just to paraphrase a few things, when we talk about privacy, a couple of the things that you're implementing with privacy is, number one, no static data. We're talking about pseudonymous tokens that convey no other personal information other than what's needed at the time. So we've disaggregated these huge documents like my driver's license and my permanent residency card, So in the case of age, we've stripped out all the information and said, look, date of birth, expiration date, document number, state issuer number. That's all we need to know to validate it. And all you're conveying then is your age. So we data minimize, which I think is a key thing going forward that we all should remember. And then it's distributed. And so it's a distributed credential that is verifiable back to the existential issuer in some way, shape, or form. So we create this trusted service environment, and it's interoperable, so that no wallet then becomes king, because wallets are going to be the next big thing. I mean, obviously we've heard about Apple saying we're going to put your credentials in here. You'll be able to get on a plane. We're your wallet, and trust us, we're going to protect it. So those are all big headwinds and really lofty goals. And it's a big change, I think, for the consumer to understand, because when I talk to people about your age, they're like, well, I have my license. And what we're really saying to them is you might have now in the future 70 artifact credentials that describe you, all the way from I took food handling safety course, and I've been certified for the next 3 years, all the way up to I graduated from Harvard University with a BA in this. This doesn't just stop with my identity, and it really also projects out into other claims that we would make as an individual that would require stacks of paper, right?
Absolutely. I'll give you one example that is relevant to the domain. I'd rather not go into the domain of others. So I will simply note that as somebody who is a naturalized American citizen self, I went through the process of getting a permanent resident. I remember before I became a citizen, when I applied for jobs in the US, that the things that I was required to present include my permanent resident card, which showed my eligibility to live and work in the US, and my educational qualifications and work history that showed, gave my prospective employer information about my qualification to do the job. So this is part of our day-to-day life cycle, because these credentials and whatever they might be, whether it is a over 18 credential or a attestation that you're allowed to drive, or an attestation that you're eligible to work in the US, they're never used in isolation. They're used with a combination of other things, and the credential ecosystem to accommodate that means that I've often found the app-based model be semi-amusing, right? So, which is basically, we'll give you an app to do that. Then the app becomes the equivalent of the 500 different passwords that we manage. I have to have 500 different apps because each app can only have one credential. What you absolutely want is the ability to sort of have an interoperable way of getting from entities authoritative format attestations about your age, citizenship, educational qualification, and the ability to store them in a digital wallet, and the ability to selectively disclose them with your consent when that information is asked. But that leads to potentially, if you're not careful, particularly a challenging place where there is a set of arguments that people make. Oh, just outsource that to company X, company Y, because they are all over the place. What that leads to, from our perspective, is that, especially for a government-issued credential, that puts a gatekeeper in the of our relationship in the government and our customer, our citizens, our immigrants, and the like, and which are then using that credential that we issue to monetize for their purposes. That is, it feels, shall say, not the right tactic, at least the incredibly high value credentials we are responsible for issuing. So from our perspective, we want to make sure that there is no lock-in when it comes to what wallet that we can issue. And that doesn't mean that we can just hand over that either. We are very concerned about impersonation of our credentials. It's not a secure wallet. So the question becomes, what is the minimum foundation of security, privacy, and interoperability that a wallet needs to support in order for us to issue it? Our approach has always been that we will not come to the table with a wallet that we issue. We will come to the table with a credential. We will work with the broader community, the ecosystem, in order to jointly develop a set of, security, privacy, and interoperability baseline that everybody can get behind in what I should support. And if the wallet that comes to our front door meets that criteria, and we either through our ability to basically directly test that through some sort of a graphic challenge response, or some sort of a assessment framework that is within the private sector, we would be happy to issue our credentials to that. We absolutely we do not believe in when I talk about we, it is I specific to USCIS and US Customs and DHS privacy in the work that we're doing in this area is very much about, we did not believe in product detection when it comes to a wallet. We make a distinction between product detection and feature detection of a wallet. So we are very much of the perspective that if you do product detection, it will naturally lead you to basically emphasizing what to vendors of specific products, and that is a path to sort of a platform aggregation and power. So for us, what is really important is we need a capability to detect the features of a wallet, and if the wallet actually supports those features at the security privacy baseline we're looking at, happy to use them, and we deliberately choose to blind to who the vendor of that product is, and we will not decision on, if it is vendor X, we will issue a credential to that particular wallet, because right. I think that's a practice.
Yeah, so we my experience is through TrueAge that Digital Bazaar's got, obviously Veris, but there's within that ecosystem you've built a following of 3-4 other wallet companies that are demonstrating their interoperability and their support of your ethos. And one of the other things that I found that was very interesting too, very early on in the TrueAge experience, we demonstrated that we could take your new permanent residency card token, and as a trusted provider of that token coming from Customs and Immigration, we actually created a TrueAge token out of it by just extracting the age of the person in there electronically, and those two tokens then resided in the same wallet, which is kind of, if you think about that goal, there's probably 5 or 6 really important existential paper documents or documents that prove our identity in the generic: passport, social security card, driver's license, Customs and Immigration. The interoperability allows us to use those source documents and the trust that is involved with, CIS on the permanent residency card to create all other things that data minimize, right? So now I could come up with one that says I can prove that I live in this neighborhood because I'm only taking my address off of my driver's license as an example. And so what we're really doing is deconstructing our identity to just those pieces of information that are needed in that time for that transaction purpose. And the wallets are important because you need one place to store them. You can imagine trying to go to this wallet to move that over, this wallet to move that over. So you really do need to have that interoperable ecosystem.
So you mentioned a couple of things that might be worthwhile to pause, right? One of them is, everybody talks interoperability, but interoperability is hard. And one of the challenges is that the set of people who believe that as long as you are following a standards and following a set of standards, you are magically interoperable. That's bullshit. right? So the long and short of it is standards by their very nature are compromises because standards are basically created by people, and people and organizations make compromises to get a standard out the door. So often what ends up happening is a single standard could have 2 or 3 different ways of doing the same thing. Right. And two vendors or implementers choose 2 separate ways of implementing the same thing and claim full standards aligned and be completely not interoperable, right? So in my program, in working with both PRIV and USCIS and CNCT Office of Trade, we don't just require standards compliance. That is the first step. Open test suites are important because there is also another stream of it where basically people create a set of specifications and standards, then make a claim that, oh, 5 of the 10 companies is implementing this. That's nice. Can you show me that they are actually conforming to the standards? And that requires test suites. So test suites are really important in order to verify compliance anything. In this particular case, are you compliant with that standard itself? So the first step is, are you following the standards? In our particular case, for example, we're using the W3C verifiable credentials data model standard for representing, the information and the cryptographic tips and the like, and decentralized identifiers as a way to represent the entities in the transaction. So use test suites to verify, but that is not enough because there are many options within those 2 standards. So we require on top of that basically a good old-fashioned multi-party plug fest, which is where the 7 companies that are in our portfolio that working on this contracts required to connect their structures to each other and basically mix and match issuance verification what pieces and types of credentials and show that one issuer can issue to multiple independent wallets, that wallet can actually contain multiple independent credentials from a variety of issuers, and that wallet then can present to a variety of verifiers and all seamless. So true multi-party, multi-platform interoperability is really critical to making this a success. The second piece of it is, you brought up, I think, it was a fascinating conversation, as you noted back in the day, right? I think the USCIS is very motivated to, and I'm glad of it as an immigrant, to make the life of the immigrant easier within their new life in the US, right? So from that perspective, the ability for them to use the permanent resident card that they would have used in a physical transaction, ability to use a digital version of it in the same way is really important to USCIS. So for example, an immigrant could come to you and say, hey, my permanent resident card, the physical one, actually has my birth on it. Can you use that as a way to sort of, generate your OG18 token with full confidence that the U.S. government backing that credential, we put that person through a incredibly rigorous vetting and validation and in-person ID-proofing process, and we have a secure way of getting that physical credential in their hands so that only that person actually is using that. Now, at that point in time, it becomes their personal responsibility to protect that credential, use it. So for them, it was actually. It was not anything different when TrueAge basically wanted to use the digital version of that credential as input to the generation of your thing. You guys can use our physical credential, digital credential. Yeah, it's the same thing. So we fully back the digital credential with the same rigor and strength that we do our physical credentials. So go to town. We're happy for you, and makes the life of our immigrants in their interactions with the convenience stores when they're, when they are seeking to buy appropriate goods easier, and we consider that to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just took a trip over to Europe and came back, and on 2 occasions, coming back into Austin from Amsterdam and clearing into Amsterdam from Berlin, I was with students who, one was a US student working in Germany who didn't have all the appropriate documents to prove that he was legally there. Yeah, he had his visa, but he didn't have the letters and all that sort of thing. And so I'm looking at this poor kid, and he's got stacks of paper that he's whipping out to the customs agent or the immigration agent in Amsterdam. And then in Austin, the same thing. There was a lot of people with permanent residency cards who didn't bring all the appropriate paper, right? And so they're sitting there for an hour. I was getting my global, renewed, but I'm sitting there with 3 other people that they were 1 document short of getting through and getting their luggage, which is, really high friction, but it's something we've got to do. And I see this as being one of those things that can really streamline this. So you could have my permanent residence or my residency card, and then you could have the letter from that academic institution saying you're enrolled as a separate token, and all those tokens together prove all that stack of paper that you had to get through immigration.
I agree with you. I think I will continue to emphasize the fact that it is the choice of the holder of those attestations, the manner in which they choose to present that to whether it is a board agency or some other private sector entity, right? We are going to give them a choice. You want to use your physical credentials? Right ahead. You will get the same level of us. If you want to use your digital credentials, go ahead. We will give the same level of service. I will simply note that I have kids. One of them, one of them will always physically print out the board passes before going into the airport. The other one absolutely refuses to print anything out and always use the boarding pass on the app itself of the airline app itself. So we wanted to enable both of those choices, and that choice absolutely will be the holder of that credential to do that, and we want to do it in a manner where they know that basically our implementation is their experience, our awareness of the use of that credential is absolutely the same as if they had used a credential.
Well, but your challenge is even better than that, because if you show them a better, faster, cheaper way, more secure way, then the natural gravitation will be towards the newer platform, which gives us the economic savings down the road.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a tad bit on this, and this might be heresy, right? So I think there is a term of art that I know that you're familiar with in the venture capital community, gain to ratio, right? So is the gain of adopting something worth the pain they'll encounter in order to make that change? Within the within the broader ecosystem, I think if you want to move off of default into pain ratio, it needs to be we're trying to. A lot of our work is basically around. We fully realize that the credentials in and of itself are useful in 1 or 2 contexts, but combination with others is where real value and gain comes from. So which is why true interoperability and the ability to sort of give the ability to the person to sort of select the fragments of their life that they can basically carry along with them in a truly interoperable manner is really important, because for them, in order to make it worth their while, in order to switch digital ecosystem, it needs to be something that is truly worth their while, which means that interoperability, low friction, the ability to sort of, if you're not comfortable with one wallet vendor, let me actually use another wallet vendor with the full confidence that they have the same foundation of security, privacy, and interoperability. And that's why all of those aspects are really important, because it is not about sourcing the power to a platform or entity, that that as a broad touch point. It is also thinking about the priority of putting the customer and a citizen and immigrant first, giving them the choice what they want to do, and giving them knowingly giving them something that not lock them into one platform or one way. And that's really that's something that we think about a lot within the US CIS and the US Customs and the privacy and SVIP implementation of ours.
So and this is one of the things that has always excited me about the W3C work that we've all been kind of jointly working on. We ran into this with COVID passport and all that. We've seen some examples of really bad COVID passports, which had everything about you, just to prove that the bearer got these 2 shots. I mean, the globe, expediency is our worst enemy on this one, right? Because you can, hey, this one's ready, it works, and I need it tomorrow. What we see is, as retailers and as NACs, is that we are in a race for time on digital identity, that we live in a paper world. Everything we have is existentially static in paper. The need is to have a digital capability with that, with veracity. What we've been doing so far today is we've been taking all that paper and replicating it up into the web space, and then hopefully this guy will go over and run a mortgage check on me to make sure I'm of age to buy something. It's overkill, and it's friction filled because I have to keep putting in my address and all that. And then at the end of the day, it's still static data. Now it's sitting across the web and all sorts of things. We learned that one with Equifax, right? All my static data was sitting up there, big honeypot to come in and steal. So what really impresses me about the work that you're doing is this. It enables us, if I will take on that friction, to your earlier point, that friction of getting my PRC in a tokenized version, which requires me to go to the post office, to sign a lot of documents, to prove more and more that I can get one. But once I've done that, if the ecosystem is there, then the friction, the gain is realized through the ability to easily interoperate with those things, and with the knowledge of knowing that that static number about me or that static information about me does not exist. It's a token that, out of the context that it's been used, is totally worthless, because the trusted services cannot go back and validate the receiver, the user, and so forth. So it's really a framework for privacy and a framework for frictionless commerce, and it's a framework for low-cost commerce because of the open system. It's a marvelous approach. Very impressive.
So you obviously use the framing in your background, right? So I think we are saying the same thing, but in a way that is coming from our particular background. I think I talked about eliminating phone home tracking problem. I talked about selective disclosure of information so that the person has control. You talked about the fact that basically PII often is a toxic asset that nobody wants to keep around, and as such, it should be something that is used for the transaction purpose, and then it goes poof, not stored. And those are all really important things and important approaches, limitation details that we pay attention to. I don't want to sort of hand wave over the fact that there is work to be done, and implementations matter. You can take the same standards that we are talking about, verifiable credentials and decentralized identifiers, and do an incredibly crappy job of it. That would basically be a privacy and security layer. So it truly is important that the profile of how we implement them are truly something that people can take a look at. They basically there's full light on it. People can evaluate the choices that you are making. Are cryptographic primitives, the way that you're exposing the data, the way you are basically providing information on, is it truly using non-correlable identifier that you can track anybody across space, or implementing details matter in here. Yeah. And I think that's where doing this work in public, using open test suites, being accountable to the global technical community so that they have visibility into the work and the ability for them to be in on this seems like a bad idea, this seems like an idea. I'm perfectly aware of the reputation and instinct of people when the Department of Homeland Security is mentioned. One of the things that we sort of went completely overboard on in this particular case is we actually put into our contractual agreement with companies that all work related to this will be done in public and in the open, and that you actually work under the W3C standard groups and the incubation groups in order to develop the piece, get put from a global technical audience, and all of the things that we need, test suites and things like that, are developed under a DHS remit. It's actually developed under W3C remit, so it could actually be, improved, used, and iterated upon by a global community. I don't want to be in a position where there is ever a question about the choice that we're making the standards and the security, privacy, and interoperability posture of that, right? So, and beyond that, we are also our privacy officer recently in conversation with USCIS actually had an incredibly productive meeting with a whole bunch of privacy and availability advocates in order to brief them fully on voices that we're making and get their feedback. It was an interesting conversation. It was an open conversation. A lot of voices that we made were validated, but we still came away with things out of there that we didn't think about, and we need to now look at that and basically figure out how to engineer that for a solution. So that's transparency and openness in how we are implementing these things, and getting feedback on a global basis from smart people who are aware of the technology is really important to its success.
Yeah, and to your point on the implementations too, I mean, we can be perfectly compliant, but we've had some people say, look, can we put the TrueH token wallet and key that to the the address on the phone? And you have to explain to them, well, okay, that takes a perfectly good untrackable token and turns it into a trackable event. And so it's about the implementation. The token itself then just got totally diminished, even though it's compliant with everything else. But that implementation of token use made it non-compliant, at least to the ethos of what we're trying to do. So we've talked about individuals. When we had a call with Vinny on there, and I found it fascinating because Vinny's job is, how do I verify corporations globally? And to me, that's like trying to eat a whale.
Oh yeah, you talk to Vinny, and basically he goes basic if you mention the word trust, right? So he picks up. For me, I do the same thing as well, but he basically says, I don't understand what trust is. Everybody talks about trust. It's like basically, many different things. So what he talks about in trust is organizational legitimacy, right? So given his remit within U.S. Customs, their visibility into the supply chain of the goods that are into the U.S. and supply chains have lots of shenanigans that are happening there. And there are multiple hops supply chain, and each of those hops might be under the control of an entirely separate entity. So it is really important for U.S. Customs in order to get information that allows them sort of gain visibility into the supply chain. Are they coming from areas where child labor was used in order to produce a good? Are they coming from an entity that is sanctioned? How do we be pretending to be somebody else that are prohibited from entering this place? These are really important questions to him, gaining visibility to that. Fascinating thing about the standards that are using is they're not a bespoke standard. It is an incredibly flexible standard that we are using for digital immigration credentials, but we are all using the exact same standard for digitizing trade documents and trade attestations. And that I think is the power of that standard and the flexibility, right? So you don't have to go back into a bespoke small standards group in order to build things for a particular vertical. What do you do is basically is work out open with that particular community in order to develop a shared vocabulary that everybody can agree to, right? So, and to be fully transparent on this conversation, if you want to know the vocabulary we are using for digital immigration credentials, do a search on W3C citizenship vocabulary. You will find that public. It is something that is out there that we are very open about, and it is under W3CC's remit. And if you want to learn about the trade document that we are digitizing, do a search on W3C traceability vocabulary. This is something that we work out in the open. You develop a shared understanding of what mean on both ends of the wire, and then you can use the exact same technology for all of them. And that was never possible before.
Yeah, and the importance on this too, because it's very easy when I talk to retailers, they're like, well, that's customs. I don't sell computers from China, that type of thing. But obviously IBM has done some famous work on blockchains, and blockchains really don't legally work unless you have digital signatures that might require some digital authentication of the counterparties. And so this work is really foundational to opening up a whole. I think SWIFT would have liked to have that when they were dealing with some of the banks that stole money through the SWIFT system, because their identity system is antiquated. And I'm pretty sure that we're looking at Bitcoin and some of these other places as modes of circumvention of sanctions against certain countries. Because again, it's lightly authenticated and it's just really the movement. So digital identity is going to reach into every part of the commerce system eventually. It's just needed.
I agree with you. 2 data points there. The currencies are not anonymous. If you think they are, you are fooling yourself. The second one is, as the person who has owned the blockchain R&D portfolio for the department over the last 7 years, I was simply that our starting point for a lot of the work was, what is there? Is there something with blockchain? And where we ended up at this point in time is a realization that there is a ecosystem out there that will use blockchain technology, and need to make sure that we have the ability to interoperate with it. And our strategy when it came to interoperability was whether you are using a blockchain system or whether you are not using a blockchain system, if you layer over that system with a standardized data model for representation, a set of open APIs for how you exchange the data, the blockchain magic sauce goes away. It's sort of abstracted away from you. So for us, I will be blunt saying that I have companies who are using blockchains in portfolio, and I have companies who want nothing to do with blockchains, but they interoperate the standards level, and that is the way it should be. You are not making a business decision on let's start from blockchain. You're starting from a business decision. You have a problem to solve.
Absolutely, agreed. Linda's coming in. The adult supervision has entered the room.
Yeah, we've just got a couple minutes left, and there were a couple questions. So accessibility is very important at the W3C and also at Conexxus. What sort of effects has ADA had on the approach the government teams have taken while protecting privacy?
So I think you're sort of blending 2 or 3 different areas. Right? I think for us, accessibility, the continued access to a credentialing solution that already exists is really important. So from that perspective, ensuring that we continue to support and continue to emphasize existing paper-based credentials have been in existence, for as long as America issuing permanent resident cards remains a fundamental tenet. Those same things basically apply to from a usability, accessibility perspective on the digitals. Our fallback often is if you are, we have existing standardized and very broadly acceptable practice with our physical credentials. That will always continue. We're giving a choice to those people who want digital credential that they can basically request one. They have to request one, by the way. We're not going to automatically issue that. So that's something that they can choose to do so. And obviously, to the extent that is technically feasible, we will make sure that the same accessibility criteria used for the digital credential as we are use the physical credential as well.
Okay, and then we have one more final question. Why do so many players appear to ignore the privacy regulations? Has DHS given consideration to how to verify or certify compliance or to monitor the presence of personal data on the web?
All right, that's a very broad-ranging question. I think from a privacy perspective, the things that we directly control in our issuance and verification of the credentials, we are baking in. Like I said, eliminating phone home architectures, the ability to provide selective disclosure to information, to give agents consent and control to the individual, the ability to ensure that there's choice in the marketplace in how we are issuing the credentials. Having said that, I will be blunt in noting that I currently take my driver's license and basically, blow it up to billboard size and put it up on a billboard if I want to do so. So that's a choice that I have to do so. So there is a significant amount of individual responsibility in how the data that you have, we will give you the tools in the credentials that we control selectively share or not share or not consent to share, so that you have flexibility to do so. You will decide, because how America works, you decide how you want to share the information yourself with an external party. I refuse to get drawn into argument about DHS mandating private policies on the broad American public. I think I would be tar-feathered and boiled in a pot if I went down that particular pot. So I think I'll just not going there.
Spoken by a man who must have had teenagers. They'll give up all their data for nothing.
All right, and with that, I think we need to wrap it up.
Anil, hey, thanks for joining us. Appreciate all the insights you've had. I really appreciate, by the way, all the support and insights you've given us as we've developed TruAge. Best of luck moving forward, and let us know if there's anything that we can do to help you. But thanks for joining us and talking to us.
I appreciate the opportunity to chat and looking forward to the collaboration. Great. Thank you.
Cheers.
Take care.